Welcome in to Double A Baseball. Adam Oppenheim with Alex Hynes here with me on Monday, July 28th. It's been a couple weeks since we did a Double A Baseball podcast. Alex, so let's start with the All-Star game and what happened down in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I said this too. I'm not sure if I told you this, but I've said it to a lot of people that I felt like this was, for me, the most enjoyable All-Star game kind of week, or just All-Star game and All-Star week. For me, I feel like the last few years I've kind of just, pushed it aside. It's not been something I've really cared very heavily about. But for whatever reason, this year it felt like it was a lot more engaging. It felt like it was a lot more entertaining. I mean, it helps when you've got in recent years, and then the All-Star game itself between the Fox coverage and just the overall game, going to that swing off and, really being truly neck and neck. I mean, for a game that's entertainment product at this point, the All-Star game is not competitive, really, at least not with a real advanced goal in mind, like getting home field. So it was fun. It was enjoyable. I mean, it had a lot that I think it was lacking in recent years.
And it seemed like it was tending towards not going to be a very competitive game. And then the AL comes back, Stephen Kwan, that game tying hit on maybe a classic Kwan hit, some may say, not hitting it super hard, but a tough play to make for the NL. And then the swing off you mentioned was absolutely terrific. A home run derby was all right. I think a lot of times the home run derby is fun if you're there. But when you're watching it on TV and you don't see where every ball goes, I like the separation of seeing like how far it goes before you throw the next pitch.
Oh,
And with the
and
time, it doesn't do that. One more thing I'll add on the Derby. I told you Jazz Chisholm, no chance of ever winning it. I'm not wearing anything crazy today.
Yeah, I think my pick failed pretty quickly. But the one thing I would say, actually, just because you mentioned the entertainment quality of the Derby, just to expand on that, I'm curious for you how you think we can fix the Derby to make it more enjoyable that and while also maximizing the homers. Because I think the two camps right now are I love the new Derby because you get to see a bunch of bombs, but also it's hard to watch every one of them, like you said. Or you got the purists saying, I miss the old format, but you're seeing like three homers because 10 outs is not a lot. So I was wondering what your thoughts would be on what to maybe mix the two together because I've got a couple ideas or at least, semblances. And I wonder what your thoughts are.
I like the outs thing that they used to do with the 10 outs. I mean, I know there wasn't a ton of homers, but when you let the players take their time more and they're not as fatigued, because you can see it once these players
Oh yeah.
have gone through like 2 minutes of this, they are tired because you're swinging with everything you have, which you don't do in an MLB game. Obviously, no one is swinging for the fences, most likely. At least you would think, maybe if it's like a 3-0 count. But I think just the separation between the pitches is the key thing for
Well,
me. I'm interested to see what you have to say, though.
well, because the thing is, they introduced a new thing. Actually, again, maybe showing how little I watched the recent years derbies, where recently at least they've added that 40 pitch or 40. I can't remember if it's 40 pitch or 40 swings, in the timed
Mhm.
period, which is fine. Like that's a good idea of trying to like space things out. But why not just make that the hard number instead of the time limit? You know, you give a set number of pitches. That way, it's not outs. Because again, 10 outs could be 10 pitches. You know,
It could.
we saw so many batters in the old format get one or two, meaning that they basically swung at 12 pitches. And you're still watching a bunch going, okay, no, that's not my one. No, that's not it. This at least says, all right, you're getting 40 pitches, 40 swings. Let's see how many you can hit. You can hit a lot, but also now you can take a moment and admire. Because I wanted to see O'Neill Cruz watch that ball that went 500 feet. You know, I
That was
want to
tough.
see, you know, the best home run hitters get a chance to go, wow, that ball was crushed. And, I think it would also make things a lot easier. Again, I don't necessarily think ESPN did a great job with the Derby this year, but I also think they are victims of the format as well. And I think if you're talking about making it an exciting product for all and not just those that have the money and the time to go to the Derby live, finding that middle ground, I think is, you have still a pitch limit, but you take away the time limit, and that way you can get a bit more of the balance. And again, I think, having the if you hit a ball 440 gets you five
I
extra
like that.
pitches at the end or five extra swings, whatever it may be. There's a way to still incentivize long homers, but also admire long homers. And it just feels like MLB, like a lot of times, it's the man, we thought of this great idea. We're trying to use this idea, and then we, just jam it in with the old plan that wasn't working and not realizing that their new fix actually on its own works. I feel like there's so many times where MLB does that, where they come up
They
with
try to
a
change
new
it.
a new tweak, and it's like, well, just make the tweak the format, or just make that the rule. It's just a common trend where common sense just doesn't seem to happen.
Well, I think it's fair to say though that the All-Star weekend is better than any other sport, and
Oh yeah.
this All-Star weekend this year showed why. Let's move on to stuff happening right now in the MLB. Before we record this, Emmanuel Clase has been placed on non-disciplinary paid leave. It's part of a sports betting investigation. It was mostly on his first pitches that have just been spiked in the dirt. Pretty big story. I don't have a ton to add on this, but it's obviously become a little bit of a problem in the MLB.
Well, and his teammate, I think, is the bigger thing too. His teammate, Luis Ortiz, was
Hmm.
flagged about a month ago, I think now. And so you're starting to see where it could be. I mean, this is a general problem. I think we kind of can realize that, and so there's certainly a bit more um conscious focus from MLB on it. And again, usually this is a case where it's not necessarily the first pitch is being, oh man, this guy's missing the zone a lot on his first pitch, which apparently is a bet you can make. Sure, I guess. Um, but it's the betting trends, I think, that are probably sparking the discussion. So that's where it's like, okay, you know, how deep can this go? And with Class A being essentially a trade chip right now, it certainly is not going to help Cleveland. Even if it turns out that this is completely nothing and it's just, a bit of
Right.
unfortunate coincidence, he is your closer. So
Teams would take him too.
yeah, and they could use him still if they're trying to compete still.
Right.
It's one of two ways. You're not getting him as his value is.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, at this point, this is just kind of the start of it, and the trade deadline's coming up. So let's talk about some moves that already happened. We're gonna go through at least three of these, the bigger ones. McMahon to the Yankees. I think the Yankees were in dire need of a third baseman. It was probably going to be him or Suarez, and I think Suarez is a rental, and they wanted more for him. I think this is a good move to get at least someone who can play defense. The Yankees' defense in the past month has just been absolutely abysmal. I mean, the Volpe Chisholm up the middle infield has been really, really bad. So they need
Right.
a good defender, and McMahon's a decent bat as well.
Well, and I think that's the bigger thing is Suarez is not a good defender at third base.
No,
Obviously, they would love to have his thump in the lineup, sure. But again, you're the Yankees. You're a team that offensively, I think they're not in a bad shape. They could be better, sure. But defensively, they need things shored up. And McMahon, again, he's about a league average bat, maybe a bit below, but his defense is good at third base. And now you can look at it two ways with the cost control element of it. He's getting paid, in the tens of millions. On the one hand, he's controlled. You've got him for a couple of years. You now have a third baseman. The negative side, I think he's getting paid a lot more than his market value really is because, Rockies. But again, I think it's a move that fit them well, fit what they need. Again, they are the Yankees; they can pay that kind of money for an unrealistic salary. And I think there's a lot of you know talk about McMahon's bat and whatnot. But again, like something Yankees fans probably won't realize and won't accept is the fact that sometimes you just need to fit your needs. And right now, you can't get a five-tool player at the deadline. So McMahon fits a hole, and now the question is, what can they get, if anything, that will help take that other step they may need.
yeah, it's been interesting because their bullpen has also been a bit of a struggle. But McMahon made a couple nice defensive plays this weekend against the Phillies. The other big move in the AL was Mariners acquiring Josh Naylor. This was not expected, but the Mariners had to make a move at first base. I believe they had the worst OPS in the league by far at first base.
Sounds right.
And Josh Naylor, the Diamondbacks have been struggling. They're falling well behind in the wild card race in the NL, and this is clearly the time to sell.
Yeah, it just felt like things were going to tick at some point for Arizona, and this was just the sign. And I think the one thing though that is a positive for Seattle in getting Naylor is we've been saying for however many years, and people in general have been saying around MLB that the Mariners need power in their lineup. They just hadn't been getting it. And I mean, again, playing in the Pacific Northwest is not an easy place to muscle homers out. But again, they just never felt like they made the offensive additions to go with their absolutely stacked pitching staff. And so this is a sign that, obviously I'm sure they would love to do it via free agency and not have to spend prospect capital and whatnot. But again, you're getting a rental bat, and a guy that I think is great value for the cost for a year and provides what you need from the first base spot. And he's not having his best year, but again, he's got 30 homer pop from last season. So you kind of look at that and say, all right, I think that should help this Mariners team that, obviously Cal Rowley's provided the thump this year, but you're talking about a down season from Julio Rodriguez. You're talking about the fact that they don't really have power at all stations, really, which has been a consistent problem.
You see that problem more when you go into the playoffs and the home run
Yeah.
power is what dominates in Josh Naylor, I think, is a great bat to add. Last one we're going to talk about, I mean, we could talk about Randall Grichuk to the Royals. I think the more interesting one is Gregory Soto to the Mets. Someone out of their bullpen. I believe he pitched yesterday on Sunday Night Baseball and looked good. I think the Mets at this point, they're always in a win now mode if you're going to pay, Soto, Alonso, Lindor, all that money. Might as well make some more winning moves.
And it's a lefty out of the pen. Again, they're not a team that needs to go for the high end reliever because they have Edwin Diaz. So you don't need to say, I need to get a closer. And so these middle relief guys are a lot cheaper. And a guy like Soto, who's again kind of in that middle tier of like, he's not elite, but he's not bad. He's serviceable and he's a playoff quality reliever for your team. And so again, it fits what the Mets probably need right now. It's nothing flashy, but it's also, again, it's very much no one's going to look at that deal and go, "Oh my gosh!" But it's the not pretty moves that really win things in a lot of cases.
So that was just part of our smaller discussion about the trade deadline. Now let's move on to what our main topic today is, and that's what's going to happen before the trade deadline, which is Thursday, July 31st at 6 p.m. Eastern, which is time is very important because that's sometimes when a lot of the trades come in last second. Alex, I'll just ask you this. What are some moves, or maybe the first move that you think could happen? Or a
You
team
know,
in
I,
need of something as well.
I'm going to start close to home. Let me start with the Cubs.
Okay.
Playoffs
Hmm.
contender, top of the Central, right there with the Brewers. You need to get that impact added. I think there's two players, which again, maybe you have them going somewhere else, and I'm not saying they're going to go to the Cubs, but I think these are the two players they should be
Right.
targeting, and that's pitching and third base. And so I'll
Yep.
start with the pitching side. I'll talk about Edward Cabrera because
Yep.
Sandy's been the big name from Miami. He's having a bad year. There have been questions after that Tommy John. Edward Cabrera, he's now 27 years old. He's no longer young, but he is still cost controlled. That'll cost you a bit of prospects, but 3.48 ERA this year. He's been sound, solid, good velo. He's kind of a perfect guy that can be a middle to top rotation arm right now with high end potential, even as a 27-year-old, to take another step forward in the right development system. And I think the Cubs certainly have felt pretty good about how they've developed pitching in recent years, a big change in their organizational philosophy. They're no longer that team that really just trades for arms and just hopes as they used to. Now they can really feel like they're developing guys, and Cabrera I think would be a kind of a perfect pick there. And then I'll do my other one just to kind of round out the Cubs here. Eugenio Suarez. He's a big
Yeah.
name. He's going to go somewhere. big power bat. I mean, he's having a real power surge this year. He's always been a power guy. The defense is not going to be good, let's be honest, but who cares? He hits bombs, and he is a perfect postseason caliber guy. He's not a DH, but I would look at him the same way I looked at like Jorge Soler in 2021 to the Braves. You're talking about a guy that can fit right into the middle of your lineup, get you a big homer in the postseason, and homers to get you there. And so both those guys are going to cost a little bit. I don't know if the Cubs are going to be willing to pay that price, but if we're talking high end of the market, those are probably the two players that I would put at the top for the Cubs. And for a lot of teams, I think anybody that needs a third baseman will look at Suarez and Edward Cabrera, I think, is probably one of the higher end pitching options right now.
I think the first name I'm going to go to is Merrill Kelly. I'm going to stick on the
Yeah.
Diamondbacks. Um, I think there's a high chance he sells, or the Diamondbacks are going to sell more, which means it's also going to cost less if you know a team doesn't want to hold on to the player. For example, on the other side is Joe Ryan, a player who's going to cost a lot, but I mean, why would the Twins give him up? He's a great pitcher. He's young. He's controllable. So there's no reason at that point for them to give him up. Merrill Kelly, on the other hand, is aging a bit, doesn't throw extremely hard, but is also pitched in some of the biggest games. Keep in mind, Diamondbacks 2 years ago were in the World Series, and we talked about where both those teams were a few weeks ago. The Rangers were getting back into the race in the AL, which is really good for them, but the Diamondbacks not so much. Another name, Mitch Keller from the Pirates. The thing is, I mean, the Cubs could be a good fit for Mitch Keller, but how many times are you going to see a trade in the division? I don't think it's super likely at this point. But the one team I really want to focus on in the NL is the Philadelphia Phillies. Everything is great about their team, especially the top four. You talk about Turner, Schwarber, Harper, Castellanos. It's a terrific top four in the lineup. The starting pitching is quite good as well. Christopher Sanchez has been amazing this year.
All
Zach
star.
Wheeler, Ranger Suarez. But the bullpen is absolutely atrocious. I think it's bottom five in the MLB. Any of these guys in the bullpen, Jax, Kate Smith from Cleveland, Durant from the Twins, find a way to get a high leverage bullpen arm. They really just have like two arms right now that have under a 3 ERA.
And you stole a couple of names. Mitch Keller is a guy that I definitely think is going to be going somewhere, and he's not cost controlled so much in the sense that he's on a cheap deal, but he is, however, under contract for 3 years. And then again, I think that the Twins really should take advantage of either Jax or Duran because if Duran gets traded, Jax is a serviceable closer that can
Right.
serve them in the future. If they trade Jax, then you just can find the next man up to be your setup man for Duran in future years. You're selling from surplus there. And so I think they can get a lot of prospect capital from one of those two guys. And if they do choose to say, all right, get a good deal for Joe Ryan, you could then combo those two together, get a massive haul, and still feel like you're in good shape. I mean, they still have Pablo Lopez, they still have some younger arms as well, to where I think they can sell at this deadline and still feel like they can take that step forward next year. Maybe not necessarily be a guaranteed contender, but they can be up there in a much quicker time than a team that's going to be going full rebuild.
There really aren't a ton of high quality arms in terms of starting
No.
pitchers, but in terms of relievers, I mean, there is a fair bit of anyone who could get moved at the back end of the bullpen. And then the position players really aren't that available. Devers is obviously going to most likely be the biggest move you would think of the trade
Oh yeah.
deadline season. Because, I mean, it happened somewhat close, but at the same time, that was a really surprise move. Another teams that could be selling, like the Orioles with Ryan O'Hearn, that's been a big one that's been connected to teams like the Red Sox. The Rays have really fallen out of the race a little bit in the AL.
Right.
You think about like Pete Fairbanks, Yandy Diaz was in the trade deadline rumors, which is really interesting. He's a terrific player, and I highly doubt the Rays would want to give him up, but you never know.
And I just feel like, again, there's not a ton of real high level position players on the block either. I mean,
Nope.
Suarez is probably the biggest name. And I mean,
He's not a
Yes,
good
he's a great
defender.
player,
So
but you're not talking about a year where you're going to get that crazy, Trey Turner rental or, anything like that. We've kind of been spoiled at recent deadlines where we've had, multiple high level guys that are on expiring deals. I don't think there's anybody that really kind of stands out and make you think, oh yeah, he's going to be traded and they're going to, really make a killing. And I think part of that just comes from the fact that a lot of the guys that are, or a lot of the teams that are going to be selling outside of the D-backs, because they are a team that are a bit further along in their cycle,
yeah,
most teams, their best players are youngsters. I mean, you look at Baltimore. I mean, you're talking about Ryan O'Hearn, not the guys that are the best players on that team because they're all 25, 26 in their first 3 years in the bigs. I mean, you're not going to trade those
yeah,
guys. So I think, and then even the bad teams. I mean, the Rockies, I mean, the A's, the White
yeah.
Sox,
They're getting younger.
their best players are their younger players that are coming up, and you're not going to be able to sell, a guy that's just either extremely old because that's usually what they do for their supplemental players, or your young guys because those are the guys that you're trying to build around in the future.
Yeah,
So
give me another Baltimore guy like Cedric Mullins. I mean,
yeah,
just
I mean, he probably could go somewhere,
I think he could get some value as well. But he's one of those older players, like you mentioned,
right?
nearing 30, if not 30. All right. So, any other names you want to toss out? I mean, we could toss out like
Right.
infinite names at this point.
I think we covered the big ones, and I think we covered the main sellers and contenders. And we'll just see what the dominoes fall because again, the deadline will happen between this show and our next one, so we'll be able to look back and say, oh well, I wasn't expecting to see so and so to go because there always is that one surprise, and maybe we've already seen it for all we know.
I'm trying to think of someone who could be like underrated at the deadline. I
I
can't
feel
think of
like
anyone that would be
I feel
like
like we've
that.
gotten to the point where people have started to think of cost control guys as trade chips, and usually those are the guys that surprise. You know what I mean?
O'Neal
But
Cruz.
at least, well, yeah, that's the kind of thought process, though. It's like that's the like Joe Ryan kind of trade, except that we're all thinking about it now.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what's happening in baseball right now. And one of the most surprising divisions, I would say, in the MLB this year has been the NL Central. I mean, everyone knew the Cubs would be pretty decent, but they've been quite good. But the Milwaukee Brewers have been right up there near the top of the MLB standings. It's going to be a fun race, and game one of Cubs Brewers starts tonight as well.
And again, I think that that's the most intriguing part of the Central. I'm not expecting the rest of it to be all that interesting the same way.
No, not the
Um,
Pirates? What do you mean?
I love Paul Skeens. I do.
Yeah, he has a losing
You
record.
know,
How's that possible?
hello, Jacob deGrom. I'd like to offer you a new friend. But let's talk about the Brewers because we talk about the Cubs a lot. Obviously we follow the Cubs more than most teams.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the Brewers have shown that they have, even without Craig Counsell going, turning over to Pat Murphy, they have the ability to continue to get more out of less. And I think, again, obviously Council did a lot of that, but also I think it's just organizational philosophy now that just shows, hey, this is who we are. And I mean, they're still, they don't really, I mean, they've Jackson Churio and they have, you know, Freddie Peralta. Those are two top quality, well-known guys. Christian Yelich being the third. Those three guys you could ask someone that's around baseball at an average level and say, yeah, those guys are good players. I know them. The rest of their team, there's good players there. There's players that people will know, but it's not like you're talking about a star-studded team. It's not quite like the Cubs in terms of the brand names, and they're still competing with, and right there with the Cubs to where they might be the team, and that ends up pushing the Cubs out of playoff contention, and they're the ones that go to the playoffs.
It is quite interesting how this roster is put together. And some of the young guys, Bryce Terang, he had a good year last year, but Caleb Durbin has come out of nowhere, really. Isaac Collins, they've had
Right.
good years. Andrew Vaughn, after coming over from the White Sox, has been really good, especially in late game situations.
He had a heater going on
Yes.
right in the All-Star break.
Yes, he did. And then the pitching staff, obviously outside of Freddie Peralta, Jacob Misiorowski, big name, throws hard. You wonder if he's gonna be allowed to pitch into, sixth, seventh inning. Obviously it depends on the pitch count, but
Right.
if you want to compete in the playoffs, you want him pitching deeper into ball games. I know if he gives up, 1 run in 5 innings, it's 75
Yeah.
pitches. They might pull him. I'm pushing him to go another inning, if later down the line at least. I think that's
Yeah.
the best move. And then someone like Quinn Priester, I mean, they pretty much just got for free from the Red Sox, and he's been a total surprise.
And he was a guy that I was, surprised. I guess I hadn't realized how far his stock had fallen. He was a former first round pick. I
Yes.
mean, he was
Hmm.
thought of decently by the Pirates and then got shipped off for nothing and then given up for nothing by the Red Sox. And he's turned into a great number two. Jose Quintana has had a solid season, getting the most out of a 36-year-old on the mound. And so
Yeah.
again, I just think that this team is again, it's not an individual, it's a unit. And I mean, the pitching staff as a whole has continued to be their star. And the bullpen. I mean, you're talking about having Trevor McGill turning into a multi-year electric closer. He's not flashy, but he's good and he does the job. I mean, Abner Uribe tosses 98-mile-an-hour sinkers and looks nasty on the mound. Jared Koenig, another guy that's came out of indie ball. I mean, geez, within the last, 7 or 8 years, he was playing in New Zealand and now he's pitching in Milwaukee, and so they're getting the most out of guys that you would have thought. And, the pitching is where it all started for them. And the offense, I think, is done really well. I think they could really benefit from a big bat. I know I heard some rumblings that they were looking at Suarez. I think they really could use a bit of
Hmm.
thump in that lineup outside of Yelich and Shurio, Reese Hoskins, and William Contreras, who's had a down year. Um, but again, I think if they add a bat, this team is already for real. But then you're talking about another level where they are not just in the conversation, they are sticking in the conversation.
It is certainly an interesting formula to build a team because you look at a lot of the stats, they don't hit a lot of homers, they don't hit extremely hard, but they put the ball in play. That's important. They're pretty clean defensively as well. You're talking about a player who they got, I think it was last year in Nestor Cortez, that was for Devin Williams, and he hasn't even pitched this year. So, or I don't think he has at least.
No.
Um, no, he hasn't. But that's another guy you add to the rotation at least a little bit. But right now, the Brewers are a dangerous team, and not for the usual reasons a team would be great. It's just they do all the small things right. They're a smart base running team, high IQ, well managed. And I like their chances in the NL Central. Obviously, the Cubs would most likely stick and being the top wild card team at this point.
Right.
Although it could be close with whoever wins the NL East, Phillies, Mets.
Yeah. But even then, I think, I don't want to face either of those teams in the playoffs right now. I mean, the
Oh,
Cubs
absolutely
do
not.
need that pitching help, but the Brewers, I think the Brewers are just as able to make a big run in the playoffs just because of that pitching.
Yeah, I
And
think.
again, you saw what they did to the Dodgers.
Mhm. That was one of the most impressive series I've seen. I know the Dodgers have been struggling in general, but I mean, they were just demolished in a weekend series. But you mentioned the Cubs. I mean, outside of Matthew Boyd, Imanaga has been pretty good outside of his last start against the White Sox, which went very poorly. It's when you don't throw hard and you throw it down the middle, most likely it's going to be hit hard. But then you still have Colin Ray, who hasn't been great this year. You're
Former
probably not
Brewer.
going to trust him in the playoffs. Yep. And then Cade Horton, I mean, maybe he develops into something. Most likely, you're not going to see Ben Brown.
Yeah, and I think again that's where they need the pitching, and so we'll see if that becomes a trend for the Central, where Cubs need pitching, the Brewers need position players. I think whoever winning the deadline is a sort of a cliche term, but I think if there's a team that wins the deadline or really like makes the bigger moves, I think that's the team that's going to probably have the better chance because right now I think they're neck and neck.
Well, Alex, I'll ask you this before we go into our last segment. What do you think of the Dodgers' chances right now in the NL? They've really been scuffling.
I mean, again, they're going to be able to, they're going to make the playoffs, obviously.
Yeah.
I think it's so hard to tell at this moment because again, we're heading into August. There's still 2 months to go, and I think really it all depends on their injured list. I think again they've got the talent to win the World Series again, but I think part of it comes down to who they have available when we get to playoff time. And I think, I don't think you sound the alarm bells because again, the healthiest Dodger roster is the best roster in Major League Baseball. And the question just becomes who's available when you get to that point. And I think, I don't think they're going to be hard favorites. I think they will be expected to win to be the best team in the NL, and I think they can be. But I do think that, again, a good deadline from a team like the Phillies, the Mets. I think they can sneak in there and either have the best NL record or knock out the Dodgers in the postseason, one of the two ways. I think, again, I don't think it's the end of the world yet, but again, I think it's kind of hard to evaluate that now.
That's fair. I think we'll look at that later down the line. So let's go to our two segments. Oh no, and AA plus. This would just be covering the last week. Why don't I go first with
All
AA
right.
plus? So my AA plus best plays of the week. We're gonna start off with Unk still got it. Rich Hill back in the MLB with his 14th MLB team, ties the MLB record for the Royals, and he goes into Wrigley, 5 innings of one-run baseball. Really impressive. Rich Hill. Unk still got it. That was awesome. Let's go to number two. Jacob Young making an absolutely insane catch. It's Will Benson up for the Reds. Hits a ball to deep right center field. Jacob Young goes back, climbs the wall. I still have no idea how those cleats can just stick into the wall and you can just add a couple inches to your vertical. He makes an absolutely terrific catch. And at number one, this might be the easiest number one we have had on Double A baseball. Nick Kurtz, legendary game, 6 for 6, 4 home runs. Are you serious? This guy's a rookie. Give him the rookie of the year right now. Absolutely unbelievable. 19 total bases, ties a single game record. Are you serious, Nick Kurtz? We got to name this the Nick Kurtz AA Plus Best Plays of the Week.
Yeah, it's that's by far the best that I think we'll ever have. I'm gonna be honest.
That's
It's gonna
absurd.
take something completely wild. I mean, as a rookie, the youngest guy to do that, to hit 4 homers in a game. Oh, and by the way, he's got 2 more hits, almost had a fifth homer. Come
Yeah.
on, man, that's
Yeah, he
ridiculous.
was spraying the ball all around the field too.
It was Oppo for the last homer
Yeah.
into the Crawford boxes.
Yeah. That was
Well,
yeah. If he had five, oh my goodness.
then you're talking about by far the best game in human history.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Let's get you your worst of the week. Let's start with when was the last time you saw a catcher's interference call? How about two catcher's interference calls? Well, in the span of a week, the Phillies had two go their way, including Bryce Harper. He steals home, and because the catcher was in the opposite batter's box to administer the tag, he is given home plate on catcher's interference. We learned a lot of new rules this week, apparently. Then let's get to another rule-based one. How about the infield fly rule? You'll always heard about it. Well, let's watch the White Sox forget about it. A pop up in the air, Cubs and White Sox. Nico Horner says, I got it, I got it. He lets the ball drop because the infield fly is in effect. He can do that. Lenny Sosa on second base must have forgotten, I guess. He's darting to third. Horner throws to third. They administer the tag and they get a double play. Jim DeSay said, an amazing play by the Cubs, a bad play by the White Sox. And that's why, White Sox, you make the list this week. Well, let's get to your third one now. We have the A's getting the top play for AA plus. They actually also get the top spot in oh no. Lawrence Butler hits a homer. That's all well and good out to right field at Minute Maid. However, Chris Carey, not sure he saw where the ball was. He thought that ball was very far foul. It wasn't. It was very fair.
1-2 pitch. High in the air, deep to right. That ball is foul. Or gone.
And so Chris Carey, the broadcaster blooper, as two broadcasters, we feel your pain, but also we've got to make fun of you here. So the A's, congratulations. You get two number one spots, whether you want one or not.
Love that. Love the last one. Really fun list. I mean, if we went back last week, we were talking about you would have the Chisholm one, I would have the Cunha throw. It would be the Schwarber swing off. It would be a good time. Well, the trade deadline is coming up soon, so we can't wait to see if our predictions are all right or they're going to be all wrong, as we know. That's going to wrap it up here on Double A Baseball. For my partner, Alex Hynes, I'm Adam Oppenheim. We'll see you next week on Double A Baseball.